Hi, everybody. We're glad you're here. We're just gonna stay on here for a couple minutes while we let people filter into the room. Meanwhile, I always like to encourage people to warm their fingers up using the chat to let us know where you heard about this series. We're always trying to figure out the best way to market our events to students. So if you could let us know where you heard about Prep with a Pro, I'd love it. And handshake. Thank you, Jean. All right. Email. Good. We do a lot of emailing. I'll tell you, we do a lot of emailing. Handshake, email, email, email. Good, good, good. Shoreline. Okay, good. We post there too. I'm glad to know that that's being used as well. Okay. Thank you all for giving me that feedback. That's very important. And we're going to just hang out for another minute while people filter in, and then we will start. So maybe we could also ask the question, so what year, what major is everybody in the room? We like to know who's with us. And then we will start. First year, wow, very eager. I love that. That is a great thing. Third year, data science, economics, first year, woo, you first years, eager beavers, I love it. Second year, poli-sci. Wow, we have a great range of majors here. Love that, because this is very important information and it applies to everybody. So, okay, well, I think that it's 3 minutes past the hour. We're going to go ahead and start. And we'll try and keep true to an hour. So here we go. So welcome to the third and final workshop in the three-part Prep with a Pro employer-led workshop series. I'm Diana Cedar, and I'm the Employer Outreach Manager, and I get to work with our wonderful employers who adore gauchos and love to hire them. You know, we know that students really like hearing about these important career development topics from employers, and that's what Prep with the Pro is designed to do. So we invite our employer partners to come and talk about, these are the 3 series workshops. We talk about crafting resumes and cover letters, networking and using LinkedIn, and interview preparation tips and strategies. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So as I said, this is our final workshop in this workshop series for the fall, and you'll be able to access all of these workshops, all 3 of them, on the YouTube channel, the Career Services YouTube channel soon. You can actually access the summer ones there already. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat in a minute when I'm done doing this introduction, because I can't multitask. And I want you to know that we're going to be sure to answer all the questions. We're going to hold them till the end because we like to sort of go for it. There's a lot of information to go through, but you can put them in the chat and then we'll come back and make sure we get everyone by the time we end this session. So hang on to we won't be answering right away, but be sure and type your questions in the chat, and we'll then address them later. So the last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this place and all the land upon which the university and we as individuals are located. We pay our respects to the Native elders, past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, of the culture of these areas, which have become a place of learning for people from all over the world. If you know whose Native community or community's land you are on, please reflect upon that and pay respect to them. If you don't, please take some time to research, pay your respect, and share with people around you. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you a wonderful partner in recruiting at UCSB, Dr. Roshni Lal, the director of the Office of Academic Opportunities and Internships at Smithsonian Institution. And she is going to share her vast knowledge on interviewing, and you can enjoy this discussion and ask questions in a little bit. Here you go, Roshni.
Thank you so much, Diana, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and connect with the UCSB campus community. Thank you for everyone who's attending. So as Diana mentioned, I'll be giving you some tips on interviewing. And my name is Dr. Roshni Lal. I'm the director of the Smithsonian Office of Academic Appointments and Internships. And I'll get into a little bit of my story at the end because it's really important to share your career journeys, career stories, emphasize that it's not a linear approach. I wasn't just born on this side of the desk as a director, right? I went through a lot of trials and tribulations to get to where I am today. And I like to stress that when I speak with college students, because I know you've got this whole world in front of you and it's exciting and intimidating all at once. But I hope that through these types of sessions and more career development, that we can help put you at ease and you can gain that confidence in sharing your story and embarking on your career journey. So I hope that you'll find this helpful and fruitful today. I do have a background in career services and university spaces. So I was a director of Career Center, director of alumni career programs. So I come with that sort of added expertise. So I like to let folks know that because it's important to know who your speaker is. And you think, well, how is this person going to be able to offer advice? I'm not just offering it as an employer. I'm offering it also as somebody with career services in my background and have conducted many of these types of presentations before. Okay, so because of that and my background and like where I come from and my knowledge, I like to start things out on a macro level. Don't worry, I'm going to dive into all the specifics of interviewing, but the biggest part of interviewing is understanding how to answer the question. The best way to understand how to answer the question is if you understand yourself first. So I know that's a bit meta, right? But I told you I'm going to start on a macro level. I do this for everything. Before you start your job search, before you write your resume, before you write your cover letter, you really have to have a firm understanding of who you are, where you came from, why you make the type of decisions you make on a daily basis, where you want to go, how you're going to get there. And you won't be able to fully come across as somebody who is confident and determined and sure in that job interview, in that resume writing, in that cover letter, until you're able to answer some of these questions for yourself. So I stress the importance of the self-assessment, the introspection, self-reflection, of laying that foundation. As Diana said, we'll have the Q&A at the end, but I definitely want you to put any questions, comments, remarks, reactions in the chat throughout, and we'll definitely get back to this. But I don't want anyone to forget anything. If you are comfortable and you'd like to share your video, that's greatly appreciated. Even though I'm sharing my screen, I still have a few tiles on the right-hand side I could see. It's always nice if there's like a face nodding along, or I see some kind of a reaction to know that folks are tracking. So if you feel like sharing your screen throughout, that's helpful, especially during the Q&A as well. But I do want people to take some time with these questions to, again, lay that foundation for yourself, to have that firm understanding. Interviewing is 99% confidence. You could have all the answers to the questions. You could have the right answers to the questions, the ones that knock them off their socks. But if you don't have the presence, and if you don't have the air about you, that this is really something that you want, and this is something and why I want it, and here I am, then that's what comes across. Interviewing is really 90% that confidence, that psychology. It's just humans talking to humans. And so the impression that you make is going to be based upon what you know about yourself, and then what you know about the role, and then what you know about the company. And so I hope you guys can take some time to engage in this. So these are just some of the topics that I think are important when you map out your narrative. And again, this will help you with your resume. This will really help you with your cover letter, because that's the time to share your story. Cover letter is not a repetition of your resume. It is your time to share your story and share points about yourself that are not discoverable on your resume. And then you can interweave these types of your identity and your narrative and your story can come across in the interview questions as well. When you're responding to these questions, there is a time and space you can incorporate bits and pieces about yourself that will give folks an understanding of who you are as a person, because it's not just the skill set, it's not just the experience. They also want to know, who is this person? How will they be in a certain type of setting? What about that dynamic around with us and our other colleagues, and the whole institution? So all of these factors come into play. You hear it all the time. Will this person be a good fit? And it goes both ways, right? Are you a good fit for the office setting, the company? Are they a good fit for you? Does it align with your identity and your morals and your values? All those things need to be taken into consideration. So take time with these kinds of questions. Really get to understand, how does my identity, how do my values, my beliefs, my background, my interests, aspirations, how do all these things influence the choices I make on a daily basis? But even more so, the type of career that I want to have. Some folks have a career choice that aligns with their cultural values or upbringing. Some folks have a career path and a career choice that's determined by how much money they want to make, where they want to live, what type of schedule they want to have. All of these factors come into play. So it's helpful for you to really, again, get an understanding of yourself. So these questions, you might say, are we really going to sit down and have this like touchy feely moment? Yes, because all of these questions actually directly relate to a typical interview question. One example, what positive things do people say about you? So this relates to the interview question where people say, what would you say is your greatest strength, greatest quality, and why? I know sometimes folks will tell me they have a difficult time, what do they call it? Bragging about themselves. And I want you to reframe it. You're not bragging about yourself. What you're doing is showcasing yourself. And I think you might say to me, that's just a fancier word for bragging. If you're not going to brag about yourself, if you're not going to showcase yourself or highlight yourself in a job interview or a resume or a cover letter, then who is? This is the whole point behind this process. So become comfortable with being able to articulate your strengths, your accomplishments, your skill sets, your goals. If you have a hard time starting with yourself, that's why we pose this question. What positive things do other people say about you? And then I noticed that people start to say, "Wait, well, you know what? My friends say I'm really good at listening to them when they have a problem." Perfect. That skill set is called active listening. And other people will say, yes, people will come to me because they'll say I often give good advice. That's called problem solving. That's the skill set on your resume. That's problem solving. So that's why we tell you, go through these questions, see how you could answer them on that macro level. These all relate to interview questions, and that you'll have, again, that more sort of confidence and solid understanding of how to answer these questions in an interview. Just want to make sure so far people can do a thumbs up or reaction or put something in the chat. Is this making sense so far? Does it sound like this could be a valuable lesson for you to engage in? Thank you, Diana. I appreciate it. Any of the students, okay, good. I'm seeing someone. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear it, because I know I'll sometimes get some eye rolls or some raised eyebrows rather, and saying, why would I take the time to do this? And when you go through the process and the exercise, you'll actually even see things like your job search might change, right? The way you search for a job, or the types of jobs or internships you search for, the way you determine the career path you'd like, even that will shift a bit once you've gone through these self-reflection exercises. So I'm not going to go through all these, but a little bit of a career theory, just want to throw the career theory in. Extensive research and studies do show all the different factors that influence a person's career decision-making process. So it's a lot of what I listed earlier. It's your upbringing, your background, your culture, your circumstances, right? Your goals. There's all kind of factors that influence people's career decision-making. So it's important that you have an understanding of that, because your values, your morals, your identity, your beliefs, those should all align with your career path. Otherwise you're going to be waking up and going someplace in daily conflict with yourself. You don't want that, right? So, and for some people, that's not the case. They want to keep it separate. It's whatever is going to work best for you to engage in meaningful and fulfilling career enlightenment, right? So I say it's career and identity development. If I had it my way, every career center across the college campus would be called the Career and Identity Center. These things go hand in hand. Both your career and your identity are ever evolving and everlasting. And so this is why I stress the importance of people not leaving their true self at the door, being true to who you are, and remembering to honor your story, honor your background, honor where you came from, honor who you are, and bring it everywhere you go, especially to the workplace, while still being professional. That's my caveat there. Okay, so good questions. I mean, really, what brings you joy? That's just what I talked about. If I'm not on a job where it doesn't align with my values and morals, there's not going to be much joy taking place. So I really do urge you to sit with these. So this also helps for a cover letter. So I'm giving you a little bit of, there's some gems you can take throughout your whole entire job search process. I know people say, I have what if I don't have enough experience? What if and you're not at this stage yet, as you're still in school. But if we have any grad students, maybe you return to school, or if, there's non-traditional, that's the label that has been given, right? Non-traditional students, you've stopped, you've come back, whether that's school, whether that's work. There's all different types of questions that people have that could set themselves back. And I really want to urge people to not see anything that's lacking, and don't call attention to any aspect of yourself as lacking, but to always reframe it and bring it up front and be upfront about it and own your story. An example for me personally, I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years, and I knew that was going to pose a problem with me re-entering the workforce, unfortunately, because that's just how the American job place is set up these days. But I didn't, I called it out in my cover letter, and I expressed why that was a strength and why that was a positive. I was not somebody who was out of work for 6 years, right? I was able to reframe that, but I was upfront about it, and I called attention to it in a positive way, in a proactive way with new perspective, not in a lacking way. So it's, yes, I recognize I may have been, not in a traditional work environment for the past 6 years. However, what has occurred, and then I explained how I grew as a person and what other types of skill sets and experiences I gained as a result of being in this other type of setting. And it worked, right? Because here I am. So I just want to I just want to explain to you, don't let any of these things set you back or hold you back or make you feel like you are less than, or you're not qualified, or what if they think this about me. Just be proud about it. Just own up to it. Don't try to hide anything, and then reframe it. There is always a way to reframe something, to turn it into a strength, to turn it into something that sets you apart from somebody else. And again, this is going into your decision making. So what is the most important thing to you as you choose your career path, as you determine the job you want to have to start, the career you want to have for long term? All of these factors come into play, and these priorities will shift obviously throughout your life. As your life stages grow and develop, so will these priorities. And I mentioned that identity and career development are intertwined. And that's why, because it's part of it. So prior to having children, my priorities were completely different when I chose a job, right? And chose a career path. And then once I had children, I was like, oh, here comes that work-life balance, the flexibility. Am I going to be able to work from home? Because I got to take them to their appointments, so they're sick every other day. So your priorities will shift just depending on what's going on in your life at any given point in time. So another thing that's important for you to map out, just sit down and map out, because when you do get those job offers, and you're going to be vacillating between the decision, I absolutely know it is a very appealing thing, especially somebody right out of college, to pick the highest pay, and that's what you go with. I just want this one. This one has a salary. But I also know that there has been a shift in generations' priorities, generations' values. Social justice has come to the forefront. Being meaningful and being fulfilled, all these things have really come to the forefront. So I think now I have seen the shift going in the other direction of, it's not always the salary. People are valuing, right, what actually makes them happy, what brings the joy. So I just, again, this is me reinforcing that message of, consider all the factors that matter to you, not to society and not to anyone else. I know we still have family obligations here and there, and our parents and X, Y, and Z, but ultimately it has to be what matters to you the most that factors in to the type of career path you want, the particular job you're going to take at any given time. This must happen before you apply to any job. I'm not even talking about the interview. I'm talking about applying. Because employers, absolutely, we look you up. We look you up on LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, that's a problem as well. So work with your career center if you don't have a LinkedIn profile set up and you want to get that amped up. If we Google you as well, we'll just type you into Google to see what kind of things come up. And this matters. So employers are doing this. So please just exercise wise social media presence. I just don't know how else to say it. I know it's just a time of people are just born on the internet, not even like into the internet. People are just born on the internet. That's what's happened lately. I didn't grow up with this. Didn't have the internet until I was actually in college. Like, I applied employers still. So we're still in a stage and age where it's like we are really looking at how people conduct themselves online. Conduct yourselves in person and consider how you conduct yourself online. Because once you join a company, and even if you have your personal say this to you, just make sure you're ready to go before you embark on the job search process. Okay. So getting ready for your interview. Obviously, you're going to be doing your homework, and these are things that should have occurred when you applied for the job in the first place. So when you tailored your resume, let me say that again. And if anybody wants to write in the chat, if they know what I mean when I say tailor your resume, and if I don't see any responses, then I'll give that definition. When you tailored your resume, when you've written your tailored cover letter, you should have already done all your research on the organization, the company, the position itself, the mission of the company. You should have all that homework done. Go in knowing everything about the company, as much as you can about the role. Obviously, the interview is the chance for you to understand more about both of those aspects, but at least know what their mission is, at least know some major projects, programs, what have you, that they've been working on, whatever you can glean from the website, social media, things of that nature. Do we have any takers here on what a tailored resume is? Definition of a tailored resume? Let's see here. Yeah, okay, good, right? That's it. So that's part of it. That is part of it, Caitlin. Thank you for that. So putting the positions that are the work experience you have, work or volunteer experience, all experience is experience. I want to stress that. Put experience that you've held on your resume that's relevant to the job posting. So yes and no. I'll give the caveat here, Caitlin, because sometimes folks will say, well, I'm only going to, if I'm applying to a marketing job, I'm only putting down all my experience in marketing and social media. I'm not going to put down that I was a server or worked in retail. I actually want to let you folks know that you should put down the work experience you've had that have relevant skill sets as well. Working in customer service industries, working in different types of environments are going to amass skill sets that are going to be transferable. So a transferable skill set, right? I know customer service, I can work well under pressure, I have excellent communication skills. You garner these in all different types of roles you're doing, whether you're working retail, whether you're in the office job, you will amass different skill sets that will be transferable. And so that's important for you to show. I've had this different types of experience, and the reason it's important is because I can take the skills that I had in this role and transfer it to another one. A tailored resume means you went through the job posting itself and you read that job description very carefully, and then you looked at the keywords in the job posting and you pulled out the keywords and you put it into your resume for that role and you tailored it accordingly. So the best thing to do is go to your career center and ask them to show you how to tailor your resume, because we're talking about interviewing today. But that also is part of you doing your homework and your research and being ready for the job interview, is that you know your own resume. So I have to stress that a lot of people will go to the job interview and either like not remember what they put on their own resume, or they won't remember what they put on the resume for that particular role because it's tailored. So question I have here is, I already submitted a non-tailored resume for a job. Would it be weird to bring a tailored version to the job interview? It would not be weird to bring a tailored version to the job interview. The only thing I'm going to say is, for the most part, I can't speak for every employer, the only version of your resume they're going to be looking at is the one that was submitted. So if you're going to an in-person interview, they're not really going to look at that copy of your resume per se. They've already the point of the tailored resume is to get through the computer program and the human resources staff. That's what I want to stress about that. So if you're already at the job interview, your resume pretty much doesn't totally come into play anymore. They look at the resume to see if they want to bring you in for the interview. Then the rest is up to you. So I hope that makes sense. Right, tailoring that resume for each. So that means if you're applying for 10 jobs, you must have 10 different versions of your resume. I have to say that again. 10 different versions of your resume that each are tailored to the specific job posting. The computer program that your resume is being run through is going through, it's been programmed to look for key terms in your resume. The HR human being, same thing, looking for key terms in your resume from the job posting. If they don't find enough key terms, you won't be passed on to the next round. That's how job screening works. That's why people will say to me, I applied for a job and an hour later I got an auto response. And I'm saying, yes, you got the auto response from the computer program that screened your resume for key terms. It didn't find enough key terms, so it didn't pass you on. Does that make sense? I hope I said that very quickly, and I hope that people understand what I'm getting at there. Again, that's a different topic, but the Career Center can help you with your tailored resume. All this is here, right? So if you're doing a virtual interview, I don't know that folks are doing in-person interviews as much anymore. I think it actually depends on the role. It depends on the place. But if you are going in person, bring your resume, and have that nice portfolio to put it inside of professional attire, arriving with enough time so that you parked, you figured everything out. These are all things to get ready so you don't stress out. But the virtual, same thing. Make sure your background's ready to go. Make sure your camera is set. Lighting is good. I cannot tell you how many times some of these seem like a given. Sure, why wouldn't I know this ahead of time? Why wouldn't I practice ahead of time? I can tell you how many interviews, and I interview all the time in my role here as I'm growing my team and hiring my team, and people are just not ready. Like, we'll start the interview and they're still here trying to adjust their camera. We're looking at their chin, then the lighting, let me close the window. On all those things should have been done ahead of time and taken care of ahead of time. And all it does is has that person come off as unprepared. It has the person come off as frazzled. Then you'll be frazzled if you're not ready, right? So, so just make sure you've got those basics out of the way. Arriving on time. If it's a virtual interview, please don't please don't join that meeting more than 2 minutes prior. And please don't arrive into that physical space no more than 5 minutes prior. If you sit in the parking lot if you need to, or outside of the building, and stare at your computer. The reason I say this is folks who are hiring and interviewing are so busy back to back to back to back to back. What we don't want is like, oh my gosh, somebody already entered the waiting room and we still have 5 minutes left. 5 minutes to us, we're still wrapping up our previous meeting or what have you. So it actually stresses out the person that's interviewing you. I know this sounds bizarre, but again, I'm trying to remind everyone that we're all human beings. So we all have human reactions to every situation. And even employers, as I said, if our schedule is usually packed back to back, so we don't want to add a stress. But if we see that you join the room or arrive 2 minutes before, we're like, okay, good. Here we're settled, let's go. I hope that that's tracking and everything too. And just practice, right? Your eye contact, check out your mannerisms. There's several interviews where I've had a hard time listening to what the answers were because the person was playing with their hair the entire time, biting their nails, tapping their feet, excessive gesturing, like what I'm doing right now. But it's okay because I'm not trying to interfere for anything. So here come my hands. All these things come into play. That's that psychology I was talking about. And folks will sit around afterwards and be like, they were excellent. They were great. I was distracted by some of the mannerisms. These things all come to play. So interviewing is a skill. Interviewing is an art, and you need to practice. Record yourself, watch it back. You will, even me, when I go back and watch this recording, well, first I'll have to get over that my voice sounds like a 5-year-old on a playback. Get over that part. And then I will go back and go, oh, I blinked like 75,000 times, or I was looking off to the right or left. That's, these things happen, but whatever you can tone down, practice, tone it down, record yourself, practice for your friends, and then you've got automated software tools as well that your university has access to that you should practice with. It's called Big Interview. I'm not endorsing one either way, but I'm just telling you what your university offers, okay? Take some notes as well, if you can. When you're hearing the folks, usually an interviewer start off, they will explain the role. They should explain the role a bit more and the company. And while they're doing that, take some notes so that it might be a question you'll ask later. But just making sure you come across as somebody who's both confident and passionate. So I've interviewed folks who had the right answer for every single thing, and they were confident, but I didn't see that passion, that desire. And I was like, do you really want this job or this role? Are you excited about it? And then having that balance of being excited and passionate and also just being measured. I know this sounds like a tall order. The more I'm saying, I'm like, this sounds like a tall order. It just takes practice. And I really encourage you, if you get an interview for a company that you're really not so sure about, but you're not even sure about the role, always interview. And I know it's like, well, you don't want to waste people's time, but listen, this is your time too. You need to practice, because even when you do love the role and you want it and you interview for that one, you may not get it. So take every interview you can get and view every single one of them as a practice tool. This is what I meant about the software that's online that your career center utilizes Big Interview. So there's the link. So if you want to know more about how to practice with Big Interview, obviously reach out to Diana, reach out to the Career Center, and they can assist you with that. It's a really, really helpful item. Okay, now we're diving into it. So what else can I tell you? But I'm telling you, sometimes it's interviewing is so much not about the questions themselves, because you could Google a million questions and ChatGPT could give you 1,000 answers. I don't advise that. I can tell who the people are who actually have their answer that's from their heart and mind versus the robot. And I could tell you, I don't ever want to hire those people, because I need to know that people can think for themselves still, because you're going to have to think for yourself every single day in the role. I don't advise ChatGPT writing your resume for you or writing your cover letter for you. It's different if you're using it for grammar or grammatical purposes, proofreading purposes, but no robot will be able to tell your story. They do not know you like that. It does not know you like that. It's just an algorithm. And if you submitted a cover letter that didn't come from your lived experiences, that will be obvious once you get to the interview. So I'm encouraging you to be thoughtful and intentional about your job search process from the very beginning. And I know we have all this new technology and tools and resources at our disposal. I'm not saying not to use them. I'm saying to use them in a purposeful, intentional, meaningful way that's still going to be able to combine who you are as a person, because you're bringing yourself to the table. So the questions are here. I can leave when I leave the time at the end. If people want to say to me, okay, I'm stumped on how do I answer this type of question, I'm happy to give you some sample responses. But when I think about what are some great interview tips, it's really everything that's been discussed so far. Understanding who you are, understanding the company, the role, the mission, preparing, doing all your homework and research. Oftentimes when they tell you this is the time of your interview, they will also tell you who will be interviewing you. Pay close attention to that. Do your homework and research on the interviewers. Look on LinkedIn, look on Google, see what other places they've worked. Some of the best ways I've made some connections and impressions in interviews is that I went and ran through all of their profiles, and I saw that we had a school connection, alma mater connection, previous workplace connection, or we had a person in common from another connection. And that leaves an impression on people. For one, they're like, oh, that's neat. We have something that we can relate on. But two, what it really shows is you did your research and your homework. It's because that person came prepared. That's the kind of person we want. So when they tell you who's interviewing you, make sure you look at all the names of those people and find out as much as you can on them, so you're coming prepared, so you can drop in sort of a tidbit of a connection that you have with them in some place. Okay, so we've got how do you answer, where do you see yourself in 10 years? So don't say things like the CEO of this company, because you might be interviewing with the CEO of the company. They don't want to hear that. And I know that people think, well, it shows, drive and ambition. What you want to do for this is, I see myself continuing to excel in this field, in this role. So you're talking about the fact that you want to show your commitment to the company. So that what they don't want, because I've had people answer this question and say, I've been interviewing somebody to be a career counselor, and I've asked this question, and they will say to me, and then eventually I just want to, work in photography. And I'm like, I'm so grateful for their honesty, because now I'm thinking to myself, well, then they're not going to stay here. And the second they get the chance to actually get a photography job, off they go. So you need to be, honest with yourself about roles that you apply for, and then be strategic about your answer. if you really do want to be a photographer 10 years down the road, don't interview for the accounting job, right? That, you know what I mean? So the answer is going to be something that aligns with the fact that you're going to stay in the field, the company, and that gives them that they know that you're not wasting their time. If they bring you on, you might leave. The answer is not married with a picket fence living here. Those are not the things they're looking for. They're trying to see somebody's commitment to the company, job, role, field, something. Now, people nowadays, it's rare that folks stay at the same company for 10, 20 years. So they understand that you may not be at the same company, but your answer should portray that you want to be in the field still and be in that role and expand and grow and develop in that field, because companies are also, of course, they want to come bring you in. They want you to contribute to them, but they're also happy to build you up for you to continue to contribute to the field as a whole. I hope that answers that person's question. I hope that is helpful. I can expand if not. Okay, good. So these are typical ones. Can prepare for these. These are the ones that are newer. So the screen I just showed you, you'll still encounter those questions, some of those questions. These behavioral and situational questions have now started to become more popular in the last 5 years, and people are becoming more and more stumped. And my clients in the past would come to me and say, I just went to that interview and they asked me to tell them about a time I failed. And even I was like, oh, okay, like these are some new kind of questions are happening. This is a few years ago. Because really, what are they always focusing on? They're focused to tell us about your accomplishments, tell us when you launched a new project, right? And that's, of course, they're going to ask you about those as well. But now they are asking you about when they're using the word failed. Tell us about a time that you failed. Tell us about a time something didn't work out. They want to see how you cope in any type of situation. They want to see the resiliency. They want to see and understand how you solve a problem and move on from it. So be ready. If you could take nothing else away from this, the most important thing about preparing for an interview, you must have specific examples ready to go. So it's not just, tell us about a time, to like tell us when you didn't accomplish something. You have to actually pick a time, right? A project that you're working on, and then the data didn't go the way you thought it would, whatever it is, you have to be ready with a specific example. Tell me about a time you overcame a conflict at work. Think in your head, whatever setting it could be. Maybe it was a dispute with a customer. Maybe it was something you didn't have, or a colleague or your supervisor. Whatever situation that you pick, just be ready to have your examples for every type of question and have different examples. And same thing, tell us about the time you had a new initiative or a new project. What was the outcome? Well, I was looking at a workflow and how we did intake for our customers, and I realized that the process was a bit clunky, and I suggested we streamline it by using a new software to organize the data, the customer client information and data, and this increased our efficiency by 90%. Like, these are the things people want to hear when you talk about an example of how you initiated a new project, increased workflow, how you created a solution to an existing problem, how something didn't go well, how you overcame a conflict. They just need specific examples. So be ready with that and have that prepared so that you're not sitting there during the interview. I will tell you the hardest time to come up with an example of a situation is when somebody asks you for it. So that's why you have to prepare ahead of time for any given scenario, for any typical, most of them are here. Most of them are here. So if you wanted to take a look at both of these lists and say to yourself, oh yeah, okay. So like, let me get ready in case they ask me this question. I'm going to be able to have that project. I'll have that conflict. I'll have the solution. I'll have an example of when I made a mistake. We asked this question, actually. What do you do when you discover you made a mistake? We've been doing a lot of interviews from my office lately. And the way people answer this question is fascinating. And I will tell you that the answer is that you're supposed to take responsibility for it. So we're listening for two things. We're listening for how you actually solved the problem, right? The actual way you solved it. But we're also listening for, and did you take responsibility? And did you take accountability? And did you tell people about it? And what you did, were you communicative and then solved it? So again, interviewing, it's an artwork to it. You're not just answering the question with the content. you're answering, that showcase the skills, showcase the analytical thinking, showcase the traits, attributes, the personality. All of that has to come through when you're interviewing. We ask the same question too, how you're handling it if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. This is part of our interview questions. When I'm giving you all these tips, if you guys ever end up interviewing for interviewing for anything in my office, you should be well prepared on how to answer these questions. We're not, and this one actually is just, we want to know how people handle a stressful situation. It's very, very busy in the office, right? And so we want to know how folks handle that pressure or what kind of coping mechanisms they have. And this one, there's nothing to gauge one way or the other. We're really just trying to get to know the person as a person. So if they tell us they just breathe for a few minutes at their desk, or if they tell us they go for a 5-minute walk, we're like, great, whatever works for you. That's really just more of us trying to get to get an understanding of who you are. So that's why I like to stress this part of the behavioral and situational questions that are more and more prevalent in interviews today, just so you're prepared for that. Because I think people have that conception of, okay, I've got all, I'm ready for my skills. I'm gonna tell them my best quality and my worst quality, and I'm ready to explain like how I, did this by 50%. All of that is important too. But some of these things have been throwing people for a loop because folks weren't ready to explain. Tell us about a time you failed, right? So in order to be confident when you respond, again, you have to know yourself. You got to know your story. You've got those examples prepared. You really want to make sure that you've outlined how you've been able to use the skills you've amassed to approach any situation, handle a situation, execute a task, yield a result. And this also comes from your resume writing. Everything is intertwined. Each one of your resume bullets should be using the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. What did you do? How did you do it? Why did you do it? What happened as a result? Quantifying whenever possible. All of this is happening in your resume, and it's tied into your interview responses as well. And then, as I said, your delivery matters, the pace. Are you too slow or is it too fast? The big interview will help you with this too. There's other programs out there that will tell you how many words per minute. The first time I did mine, it was like, oh, I guess I'm incoherent. I'm talking so fast, no one can understand me. So, slow down, watch your gesturing, watch your word choice. It's really important to have some concise answers. The rambling takes its effect on people. So don't forget, we're human beings and we're conducting several interviews at one time. We need to hear a very concise, succinct, straightforward answer that doesn't go off on rambling, that doesn't continue on and on, because we're not going to cut you off. That's the other thing about an interview. So you have to be in tune the entire time. You also need to be reading the body language of the interviewer and be able to see, okay, I need to finish my response here. People are kind of zoning out, tuning out. So there's a lot of things that you need to be paying attention to while you're interviewing to make sure that you're holding their attention, that you're answering it in a concise manner, that you are not droning on. This happens. People get nervous. We know this. But when you start to ramble, then we've forgotten the very good answer you might have had at the beginning of that response. So Indeed has some good tips here. All the links are here at the bottom of this. Now the interview is done. I have to say I'm actually still a bit taken aback by the number of people who don't send us a thank you email. I thought this was a given. I thought everybody knew that you needed to do this. Within the first 24 hours of the interview, send a thank you email. If you have all the emails of the people that interviewed you, send it to all of them. If not, send it to one and say, I hope you share this with your colleagues. It matters. If you haven't heard back in about 2 weeks, send one follow-up email and then you can just call it a day. This is my advice. Obviously, you feel free to do whatever you would like to do, but it's the human nature, it's the psychology of it all. We're not going to feel the warm and fuzzies about somebody who sent us a million emails and phone calls and kept following up. So just be cognizant and aware of that. There could be 1 million things happening and going on with an employer and the company at any given time. Some people need to hire immediately. Some people, the urgency isn't there. So you just need to be patient. This last persevere, this is The second best advice I can give you, the first one was always have examples. Please do not take it personally. The job search process is a long and lengthy one. If you don't hear back, it's not necessarily because you're not qualified. It's not necessarily because of anything that has to do with you personally. There's a million factors that go into why an employer will select a resume to even invite someone to interview, a million reasons that go into why somebody selects somebody after the interview, and you'll never know. So don't beat yourself up about it. However, do engage in that self-reflection process and do think back. Could I have answered something differently? Could I have been a little bit more prepared? Was there more research or homework I could have done? Should I not have bitten that pen cap right off? Whatever it is that you could have controlled, you can reflect back on that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you cannot take these things personally because you won't be able to continue. So I'm letting you know, you just got to keep going. If you apply to 15 jobs and you get 0 interviews, keep applying to jobs. If you apply to 20 jobs, you get 1 interview, no offers, keep applying to jobs. 30 applications, 2 interviews, 1 offer, there it is, right? And I don't want anyone to weed themselves out. This happens a lot. I have a lot of folks who are like, well, I didn't apply because XYZ. And I don't even want to hear the because I'm thinking, well, why would you weed yourself out? You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know what the decision making is for bringing in a candidate. Let them weed you out. So don't hold back. You think you might not have the experience. You think obviously I'm not saying that you should completely go something that's a 180. There's always got to be at least some experience or some expression of passion or interest in the role and in the company. But don't count yourself out. And don't let your insecurities or trepidation or uncertainties or unfamiliarities prevent you from going after something that could be a perfect role and make you very happy and fulfilled. So I want you to know that a lot has changed in the world of employment, employers, the way that they think about their workforce. The hiring practices have shifted. The way that folks treat and care about their employees' well-being and mental health, that's shifted. We have social justice, racial reckoning. COVID changed a lot of things about work modalities, virtual, in person. People realized that there was a transition that they wanted to make in their career. Their priorities shifted. A whole lot of things are going on in the world of employment these days, and it's all for the benefit of the employee. So I want you to keep that in mind when you are exploring your career paths and the different roles. And again, what is going to align with you as a human and your lived experiences and your identity and your priorities and values and goals. But I want you to know that it's your story, it's your lived experience. Every single person matters. We're all coming from someplace different, but not one is better than the other. So honor yourself, right? And take pride in who you are and where you're from. Don't discount yourself. Don't dismiss yourself. Stand up proud, stand up tall, and just be comfortable and confident and just be who you are, and bring that throughout every aspect of your job search practice, whether it's conducting an informational interview, doing a job shadow, searching, writing the resume, the cover letter, the internship, the career. Have confidence in who you are and don't count yourself out ever. I know I want to leave this time for Q&A. It's super important. I just giving you a brief quick rundown about bringing yourself to the table and who you are. And I mentioned that nothing is linear. I'm from Los Angeles. I went to UCLA, very privileged. I point that out off the bat. I am a woman of color, but I did grow up privileged. I grew up in Palos Verdes. Both of my parents had PhDs. My dad was an immigrant from Fiji. My mom's parents were from Trinidad and from Hungary, and there's all kinds of things going on in there. But her parents were both deaf, and they, on the surface, were Black and white. So they met and married at a time when interracial marriage was still illegal. My dad is Indian from Fiji, which means courtesy of the British. The Indians were brought as indentured servants all over the world, Fiji being one of those places. So we speak the language and we have the food and wear the clothes, but we've never been to India. We've never been to India. I've never been there. My dad's never been there, and his parents have never been there. But we go to Fiji every year. We make sure I'm connected to that, and my kids are connected to that. Why am I saying all this? So even though I am a person who comes from privilege, My lived experiences are rooted in my family's lived experiences. So I am no stranger to racism, to prejudice, to discrimination, to what folks who have disabilities encounter, to the legacy of colonialism. I'm no stranger to any of those things. Grew up in this very village mentality, family first, collectivist communal culture that directly impacted my career choice. So I'm tying it all together. I hope you can see having that strong understanding of who you are and where you come from and how that impacts your career trajectory. I weave these stories throughout my cover letter, and I weave these stories into my interview responses as well. I need folks to understand this is exactly why I'm passionate about the role I'm interviewing for. It is because I grew up a certain way. It is because I have these values. So I've always been in roles where I have been in a place of service, of education, right, of helping others. And so I explain to people the reason I'm the right fit for this job, the reason you want to pick me over anybody else is because this has been a way of life for me. And I tell these stories here throughout. As I said, I don't shy away from it. It's in my cover letter. They're in my interview responses. I went to UCLA. Undergrad was in anthropology and Scandinavian studies. I did an internship at the Los Angeles Natural History Museum. Loved it, fell in love with it. It led me to go straight to the George Washington University in DC to do a master's in museum studies with the anthropology concentration. So I went from LA to DC, and yes, I was scared. And how am I going to live on the East Coast? And I've never done that before. And now I'm going to be cold, and I got to buy some pair of boots and a coat. But I did it, and I loved it. And I was so certain I was only going to go there for 2 years and then leave and go right back to a cozy, comfortable home. And instead, I fell in love with the city of DC, and I was there for 7 years. And then I went all over the place. So I do want to leave the time for the Q&A. So I went and lived in Seoul, South Korea. I worked as a civilian career counselor on the military base, helping folks transition out of the military and into the civilian workforce. I mentioned I was a stay-at-home mom. I returned to the workforce as a career counselor at a university in Southern California. Worked my way up from there. I was full-time working, became a single mom along the way. That's a bummer. These are the things we don't plan for in life. As I said, nothing is linear. We've got all these ups and downs and pitfalls. Became a single mom when my kids were 3 and 6. I decided that, hey, I'm a single mom. I got a full-time job. Wouldn't it be great if I started a full-time PhD program and just threw that into the mix? So I did that, and I earned my PhD in higher ed and student affairs. I worked at Syracuse University doing their alumni career services for the West Coast in Los Angeles. And then a year ago, I saw this job posting at the Smithsonian. And the second I saw the posting, I knew that this was my job. Here I could combine my love of museums and career services into my very first role, which was at the Smithsonian. So it's a full circle moment. I tell the story as well to talk to you about connections and networking. I never lost touch with the folks that I met when I was an intern at the age of 21. When I was an intern at the age of 21 at the Smithsonian, I never left touch with those folks. And that's how I found out about this role today. I didn't find it on LinkedIn. I didn't find it on Indeed. I saw it because of a listserv I belonged to from the connection I made when I was here, when I was an intern. So keep your contacts alive and well. You never know what's going to happen, but it's definitely a full circle moment. And this picture of me with the ruler, that was me as an intern 23 years ago at the Smithsonian, cutting a panel for an exhibition display. Right next to it with the castle and the Washington Monument, that's me 23 years later. So this is me as a Smithsonian intern, and then this is me as the director of the Office of Internships, Academic Appointments and Internships, and we facilitate the thousands of internships and fellowships for the entire Smithsonian. So you never know what's going to happen in life. And I just want to stress to you all the importance of honoring yourself and your identity. These are the resources, and now it's finally time for the Q&A. Okay. I think I answered all the ones that came across in the chat, and Diana did as well, so thank you for that. But please don't be shy. Unmute, what have you.
I just added the YouTube channel in the chat. So if anybody wants to catch the recording, because I was asked a couple times about whether or not you'll have access to the slides, they're going to be in the YouTube channel not too long from now. Oh, you got another question.
The dreaded group interview. So they still do those, huh? Well, can you Give me a specific there, because there's a lot to say about a group interview. So is there one particular aspect of the group interview that you would like some advice on? Because it's all going to be the same, right? You need to do your research and you need to do your homework and come prepared and have your questions ready to go. Oh, yes. Always have questions for the interviewers as well. At the end, when they ask you, "Oh, you have any questions for us?" You should have come prepared with questions, and maybe throughout the interview, some more questions came to mind, but you want to make sure you always have some questions prepared. But I guess, Ashley, if you, as I said, this is a bit broad. So if you had something in particular about a group interview that you wanted me to, here we go. Okay. Standing out in the large group. Yeah. So when the type of group interview you're talking about is when the folks are circling the room and listing their responses, or is it, because there's different types of that too. So the standing out is your narrative, because as I said, very few folks are comfortable with sharing their own story or weaving in their passion or what has contributed to their decision making and motivated them in life. So when you start to connect your lived experiences and what motivates you into the response for the content, people are going to remember that and pick up on that and hear that. Same thing goes for a career fair. When you're going to the multiple tables and you want people to remember you, pick a tidbit, personal tidbit about yourself that's going to make you memorable. Same thing for making you stand out. I hope that helps.
You have a question on international students and sponsorship.
Yeah. I will direct you just to the Career Center and their Office of International Services, because that's a completely different, it totally depends on the employer and their willingness to sponsor the OPT. It just, that completely depends on each employer and each role. So I know for CPT, that's, a lot of employers are willing to do that. That's fine with the international students and the CPT. That is a thing, but the OPT is different. You'll usually see that the employer, there's ways on like LinkedIn and other search engines that will actually, you can weed out and see which employers do sponsorships. So that's one way to see. And then you'll see on the job posting itself, it might already tell you, what the criteria is for applicants and if they are sponsoring visas. Right. Should be fine.
I would add that some of that information is going to be on Handshake through job descriptions and that kind of thing. And some of the profiles of the employers actually have information on sponsorship opportunities there. So that's another place to look to find out who is considering OPT or CPT.
So that's also you leave it up to them if they want to offer you the role, right? And it's that it's up to the employer to get an understanding about who might need the OPT or not. But I know you would, and most employers, you have to answer what. That's another thing that employer will look at off the bat. If you want to bring it up in your cover letter, if that's what you're saying about being upfront, you certainly can make mention of it. But in that early stages of the interviewing or the job screening process, it's even not anything that's even another business, if I can put it that way. Diana, do you know what I mean? Like, that's not, those situations, they are not, shouldn't be making assumptions about whether or not somebody, is going to need this. Like, we don't want to hire them because we might not want to even interview them because they might need a sponsorship. We don't know if you need a sponsorship or not. We want to at least get to know who you are as the candidate first. I hope that answered it.
Well, some employers like the government can be very strict on those kinds of things.
They'll be upfront. They'll be very upfront. Yeah.
Right. As you said, it's agency or organization specific. So it's a tough one.
Yes, Ashley, absolutely bring something to write with. Absolutely. Because like I said, you'll be taking notes on when they describe the position or the company. So you should be taking notes. And then if you might have a question that you want to ask, you should definitely write that down. And we say that too, even in the virtual interview. Our disclaimer is that we're taking notes. And the candidate will also tell us, yeah, if you see me looking down, I'm taking notes. And we love to hear that. We were like, hey, great, good. As long as it's not distracting to you. right? Like for you to be able to take notes and be able to interview at the same time.
Okay, so we're about at time. If maybe we have time for one more question, if a student cares to put it in the chat or um, come on camera. Oh, here we go. Oh, the recording and PowerPoint will be on the YouTube channel, and I will put that back in the chat again, so you all have access to it. Just so you know, the summer Prep with the Pro is in there, so you know you'll see another one that's on. Rachel, I'm going to send it to everybody. You'll see another
I hope
series.
folks found it helpful. I mean, I hope it's you know, I always like to hope the information is valuable and helpful. I try to do something that goes beyond what you could Google. Great, thanks, Nicholas. Goes beyond what you can Google, goes beyond what you could look at on LinkedIn. And, you know, I try to give folks the reminder about that human aspect of the job search process and really impress upon people the importance of bringing yourself to the table, your story, and honoring who you are, and weaving that and integrating that into all aspects of the job search and the resume, the cover letter, and the interviewing. And they don't want people to forget that who you are and where you come from and how you want to get there is just as important as increasing, you know, something by 50%. Like all of that matters, and just figuring out how to weave it in together. Good. Okay, great. Good. I'm getting some direct messages as well, so I'm very glad to hear that. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I forgot to say that. A lot of folks hopped off already. My bad right there. But feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and you can also follow some of these pages that we have on LinkedIn too about internships and fellowships.
Well, Roshan, I want to thank you so much. This has been an incredibly helpful discussion. And I really appreciated your bringing the personal into this, because it's empowering. It's telling students that their stories matter, because they do. Their authenticity matters, because it does. And I don't know, this is just really it's a very special program. So thank you for you know, bringing that aspect into the topic of interviewing, which is something we all need to do.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you again, Diana, for the opportunity and invitation. It was an honor. And thank you all for attending.